Hey everyone, have you ever thought about what life was really like during the Middle Ages? Before we talk about what brought that era to an end, let's take a look at how people actually lived. Life back then was very different depending on who you were. Some people lived in grand castles and ruled over land, while others worked on farms, crafted goods in towns, or spent their lives in monasteries. Today we're going to explore medieval castles, the massive stone fortresses where powerful lords and noble knights lived. If you visit France, Germany, or other parts of Europe today, you'll see the ruins of ancient castles. Some still stand proudly on hilltops, while others are covered in moss and crumbling after centuries of abandonment. But back in the Middle Ages, these castles were full of life. Even though they were cold and dark, they were the safest places to live. Lords ruled their lands from here, villagers rushed inside for protection during attacks, and knights trained for battle. Castles were also centers of chivalry and adventure, where tournaments were held, and storytellers entertained people with tales of heroism. Now, let's travel back to the 11th or 12th century and step into one of these castles. The world was very different back then. Instead of big cities and highways, there were vast forests, and everything felt more wild and untamed. Picture a castle in France, built by one of William the Conqueror's vassals. This castle has seen countless battles, and everything about it is designed to keep enemies out. It sits on a steep hill, making it difficult to attack. A deep moat surrounds it, and a tall wooden fence lines the edge where guards patrol. The entrance is extremely well protected, with not one but two drawbridges and several gates, making it nearly impossible for an enemy to get through. Even if an enemy managed to cross the drawbridges, they'd still have to face a massive wooden door guarded by two tall towers. But that's not all. Inside the gateway is a narrow tunnel with an iron gate called a portcullis, ready to slam shut at a moment's notice. And beyond that, another door, another portcullis, and even more barriers. The gatekeeper has an important job, making sure only trusted visitors get through all these defenses. Once inside, we enter the first courtyard, surrounded by thick stone walls with battlements and small slits where archers can shoot arrows at attackers. Towers rise from the walls, with stairways leading up to higher levels. This courtyard is where the castle stables are, where the lord keeps his horses. There's also space for villagers to take shelter during wars, and a giant brick oven where bread is baked for everyone in the castle. Moving further inside, we pass through another fortified gateway into the second courtyard. This area is full of buildings used for different things. There are storerooms packed with supplies in case of a siege, and a huge kitchen where food is cooked. The meals are pretty basic, mostly roasted meats with no fancy sauces or seasonings. Many castles also have a small chapel here where people can pray and attend church services. But the most important part of the castle is the keep, also called the donjon by the French. This tall stone tower is the last line of defense and the strongest part of the castle. Deep in its lower levels are dark, damp dungeons, where prisoners and captured enemies are held. If an army manages to break through all the other defenses, which is incredibly difficult, they still have to get past the keep. Its thick stone walls are packed with skilled archers, ready to fire arrows down at anyone who gets close. Taking over a keep usually required a long, exhausting siege, where attackers had to starve out the defenders or use giant weapons like battering rams and catapults to break through. Even if the enemy managed to storm the castle, the battle wasn't over. Fighting continued in the narrow hallways, on steep staircases, and in dark, twisting passages. The defenders knew every corner and used every trick they had to hold off their attackers. But even when all seemed lost, the lord and his knights often had a secret escape plan. Hidden passageways and underground tunnels that led to the forest, allowing them to escape and fight another day. As time passed, castles became even stronger and more advanced. Many European lords, after seeing the great fortresses of the Eastern Empire during the Crusades, returned home and built even more powerful castles. One famous example is Chateau Gaillard, built in Normandy by Richard the Lionheart. He called it the Saucy Castle because of its bold defiance against the French king. It was a masterpiece of military design, with towering walls and clever defenses that made it nearly impossible to capture. And when the battles ended and peace returned, life inside the castle followed a steady routine. People had jobs to do, traditions to follow, and ways to entertain themselves. The lord and his family didn't always stay in the dark, cold tower known as the donjon. That part of the castle was mainly for storage and defense. Instead, they lived in a large hall within the courtyard. This hall was the heart of castle life, where meals were eaten, decisions were made, and guests were welcomed. It was a place for dining, meetings, games, and storytelling. The castle was always busy. Servants kept fires burning, cooked meals, and managed supplies. Blacksmiths and carpenters repaired weapons and buildings. Stable hands cared for the horses, and guards patrolled the walls to keep everyone safe. Even in times of peace, there was always work to do. Young noble boys trained to become knights. Until the age of 7, they stayed with their mothers, learning manners and basic education. After that, they were sent to another lord's castle to begin training as a page. As a page, a boy helped serve meals, carried messages, and assisted the lord and lady on hunts. But his training wasn't just about chores. He learned to ride horses, handle weapons, and follow the knight's code of loyalty, bravery, and honor. By age 14 or 15, he became a squire, taking on more responsibility. He cared for his master's weapons, polished armor, and tended to the horses. When his master went to battle, the squire followed, carrying spare weapons and helping when needed. Some squires even got the chance to fight, proving their courage and skill. Even with tough training, there was time for fun. In the evenings, squires played games, listened to music, and debated whether hunting or falconry was the better sport. Some enjoyed falconry, where trained hawks soared through the sky to catch prey. Others preferred hunting wild boars, where the chase, barking dogs, and the danger of facing an angry animal made it a thrilling challenge. After years of training, a squire who proved himself ready was finally knighted. The night before the ceremony, he stayed awake in a church, praying beside his armor. At dawn, after confessing his sins and attending a church service, he was dressed in 3 symbolic colors: red for bravery, white for purity, and black as a reminder of death. In front of nobles and knights, he knelt as his lord tapped him on the shoulder with a sword and said, "In the name of God, Saint Michael, and Saint George, I dub thee knight. Be brave and loyal." The day ended with celebrations, feasts, and tournaments, but for the new knight, it was just the beginning. Some went to war, while others sought fame and adventure. Whether they lived up to the ideals of knighthood or followed a different path, only time would tell. Inside the castle, life carried on. Training continued, feasts were held, and stories of great knights inspired the next generation, who dreamed of their own adventures and the chance to make history.